UTME 308, Study Session 5, The Problem of Induction. Introduction. Induction is a form of reasoning that makes progression from particular individual instances to wider generalizations. It is a method of arriving at some generalizations from observation and experimentation of some particular instances. In this lecture, we shall look at the meaning of induction, examine the problem of induction, and then conclude with an attempted justification of induction. Learning outcomes. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to define induction, distinguish inductive reasoning from other forms of reasoning, and lastly, show the relationship between induction and universal laws of explanation. Meaning of induction. Induction is a form of reasoning that makes progression from particular individual instances to wider generalization. Put differently, it is a method of arriving at some generalizations from observation of and experimentation with some particular instances. C.S. Peirce defines induction as where we generalize from a number of cases of which something is true and infer that the same thing is true of a whole class. Peirce, 1957, page 1-9. Inductive reasoning may be categorized into three types, namely, imperfect induction, intuitive induction, and lastly, perfect induction. Imperfect induction is a generic term that describes any form of induction based upon an incomplete enumeration of instances. The imperfect induction comprises of the following: induction by simple enumeration, analogical induction, and eliminative induction. Induction by simple enumeration is nothing more than an empirical generalization. That is, when we, from one or more instances of observed events, generalize or argue to a proposition that applies universally to all such instances. Analogical induction proceeds from a given particular to another particular. It emphasizes uniformity and correspondence between particular instances. Eliminative induction was propounded by Francis Bacon, who saw the induction by simple enumeration as a false scientific procedure. According to Bacon, eliminative induction analyzes nature by proper rejections and exclusions, and then after a sufficient number of negatives, comes to a conclusion on the affirmative instances. The second type of inductive reasoning, intuitive induction, is more concerned with having an intuitive insight into the truth of a universal than making attempts to establish it as a generalization. The third type is the perfect induction, in which the inductive process is perfected by citing every possible instance that might bear on the formulation of a universal proposition. The problem of induction. The problem of induction is a philosophical question of whether inductive reasoning leads to knowledge. It calls into question the justification for generalizing about the properties of a class of objects based on some number of observations or particular instances of that class, and b, presupposing that a sequence of events in the future will occur as always had in the past. David Hume calls this the principle of uniformity of nature. Hume, 1975. The problem of induction calls into question all empirical claims made in everyday life or through scientific method. It is for this reason that C.D. Broad describes induction as the glory of science and the scandal of philosophy. C. Wills, 2011. Although the problem of induction dates back to the time of Pharaoh of Elis, who lived in the ancient period, it was David Hume who introduced the problem more vociferously in the mid-18th century, with the most notable responses coming from philosophers like Bertrand Russell, Nelson Goodman, and Karl Popper, amongst others. It behoves on us, therefore, to examine David Hume's and some of these other ideas on the problem of induction. David Hume on induction. David Hume's discussion of the problem of induction is laid out in his famous work entitled Enquiry Concerning Human Understanding. In this work, Hume argues that we do not indeed make inductive inferences in the experimental sciences and in our daily lives from events of our past experiences, to the effect that if events resembling those of our past experience were to occur now or in the future, then will produce effects resembling those of the past. Hume, 1975, pages 36 and 37. According to Hume, we cannot use past experiences to assert that future occurrences, which are yet unobserved and may never be observed, will resemble those of the past. If this is so, Hume asks, what is the foundation of all our conclusions from experience? Hume argues that there are no justified logical grounds for drawing futuristic conclusions from past experiences, because such inference is neither intuitive nor demonstrative. Aigbodio, 1999, page 151. If, according to Hume, if we insist on justifying our inferences on the basis of experience, that we would open two main objections. The first is that it will lead us inexorably either to a speculatory or infinite regress argument. Secondly, is that since all such inferences from experience suppose as their foundation that the future will resemble the past, it supposes also that similar powers will be conjoined with similar sensible qualities. All of these, Hume argues, are in the need of logical justification. Hume expresses his anxiety in his inquiry concerning human understanding thus: if there be any suspicion that the course of nature may change, and that the past may be no rule for the future, all experience becomes useless and can give rise to no inference or conclusion. It is impossible, therefore, that any argument from experience can prove this resemblance of the past to the future, since all these arguments are founded on the supposition of that resemblance. Hume, 1975, 37 to 38. The point being made by Hume, as recapitulated by Jack Aigbodio, is that the inductive derivation of natural laws and scientific theories from a number of singular observations and experiments is inconclusive and questionable. Aigbodio, 1999, page 152. Hume's conclusion is that because the experiences of constant conjunction of events and objects over a long period of time, we have been habitually conditioned to expect one on the appearance of the other. Bertrand Russell and Karl Popper on induction. In his book, The Problems of Philosophy, Bertrand argues, like Hume, that there are no justifiable reasons on which to hinge the reliability of induction. Russell wonders how any number of cases of the law being fulfilled in the past affords evidence that it will be fulfilled in the future. Russell, 1985, page 34. He argues that we only justify our beliefs that the future will resemble the past by reference to how past uniform successions or coexistence have caused our expectations of similar uniform successions or coexistences. But such expectations, he argued, are in no way justifiable on any rational or logical grounds. In his The Logic of Scientific Discovery, Karl Popper argues, just like Hume and Russell, that there can be no valid argument allowing us to establish that those instances of which we have had experiences resemble those of which we shall have experiences, while responding to the view, supported by some, that scientific truth, laws, and theories are the result of inductive inferences. Karl Popper argues that induction is irrelevant to scientific procedure. According to Popper, the way knowledge progresses, and especially our scientific knowledge, is by unjustified anticipation, by guesses, by tentative solution to our problems, by conjectures. These conjectures are controlled by criticism, that is, by attempted refutations, which include severely critical tests. C. Ojang, 2008, page 8. For Popper, therefore, scientists do not develop theories on the basis of observation and experiment, but on the basis of conjectures and as well as informed guesses, which are intended to improve upon earlier theoretical accounts about the natural world. In other words, there is, according to Popper, even a theoretical background, which these observations and experimentations are meant to improve upon. He argues that the belief that science proceeds from observation to theory is still so widely and so firmly held that my denial of it is often met with incredulity. I have been suspected of being insincere, of denying what nobody in his senses can doubt. But the belief that we can start with pure observations alone, without anything in nature of a theory, is absurd. Ojong, 2008, page 8. Justifications of induction. Whereas some philosophers like Hume, Russell, and Popper are of the view that induction is in dire need of both rational and logical justification, others like Ludwig, Peter Strawson, and Stephen Barker are of the opinion that the problem of induction is a trivial problem that arose from confusion of terms and which can be resolved through conceptual clarification. Each of these positions has its root points. However, philosophers of various persuasions have attempted to resolve the problem of induction by employing various forms of justifications. Let us now examine some of them. The analytic justification. According to the analytic perspective, induction can be justified through an analysis of what is usually meant when, for instance, we say, as a correct inductive argument is more probable than any of its equally derailed rivals. On analysis, the explanation goes: we will discover that what we usually mean by saying that the conclusion of an inductive argument is correct or more probable that its rival is that the conclusion has been arrived at in accordance with current or approved inductive procedures, employing the relevant criteria which will enable us to assess an inductive argument as correct, probable, rational, and justified. Aigbodio, 1997, page 158. Here, the relevant criteria which enables us to assess an inductive argument as correct, probable, rational, and justified. The predictionist justification. This prospective attempts to justify induction on the grounds that we have a wealth of experience in the use of inductive references and that in the past, most of the conclusions which we have been led to draw on the basis of inductive reasoning have not only been useful and successful in discovering regularities in the natural world, but also in making accurate predictions about future events. Aigbodio, 1997, page 160. This form of justification underlies the activities of meteorologists and other forecasters, whose reliance on the inductive principle has led to numerous successful and near-accurate predictions about the future. The evolutionary justification. The evolutionary justification hinges its argument on the claim that humans as unique species are naturally and genetically programmed to comprehend and employ the inductive method in dealing with their world. The explanation here is to the effect that human beings in the course of natural selection have acquired the capacity for drawing conclusions on the basis of limited inductive evidence and have found this practice a useful and reliable way of interpreting their past experiences and making predictions about the future. The pragmatic justification. Instead of seeking to validate the inductive principle itself, the pragmatic approach seeks to validate the practical act of adopting and using induction by disclosing what practical ends or goals will be met if we continue to rely on induction. In other words, while the pragmatists are unwilling, or do we say unable, to defend induction itself, they are ready to defend its adoption in terms of the ends to be achieved by this adoption, which includes the discovering of further laws which gives greater success in predicting the course of events, as well as the unraveling of nature's secret so that we can understand, predict, and control. Aigbodio, 1997, 163 to 164. Study session summary. In this lecture, we have looked at the meaning and problem of induction. Induction, we explained, is a method of arriving at some generalizations from observation and experimentation of some particular instances. The problem of induction calls into question the justification for generalization about the properties of a class of objects based on some number of observations of particular instances of that class, and for presupposing that a sequence of events in the future will occur as they always have in the past. We examined the views of Hume, Russell, and Popper on induction, and concluded by looking at 4 attempted justifications of induction, which are the analytic justification, the predictionist justification, the evolutionist justification, and the pragmatic justification. End of study session 5. Thank you for listening.